Right.
I beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is this House do now adjourn. Mr. David Lammy. Should we give it a minute? Just David Lammy.
Well, I'm very grateful, Mr. Speaker, to have the opportunity to call this adjournment debate this evening. Mr. Speaker, you might not know that Seven Sisters Tube Station in my constituency has about 3 million people visit it every year. Mr. Speaker, I can tell that your mouths are aghast. That's because it is, of course, the home and the tube station that people arriving in Tottenham very often to see Tottenham Hotspurs play football. It's the tube station that they come through, and it is very much the gateway of my constituency. Ward's Corner is part of that gateway. It's the first building you see on exiting the Seven Sisters tube station. In the year of my birth, 1972, the former Edwardian department store was left abandoned. Soon it fell into a state of disrepair, and throughout my childhood and teenage years, the space remained unused. It was not until the early 2000s when new arrivals came to Tottenham from Peru, Honduras, El Salvador, Brazil, other countries across South America, that it became lively again. Many had fled chaos and upheaval at home, but in Ward's Corner they spotted an opportunity to build a new home out of the disused space. Stepping inside the Latin village they created is like entering a whole different world. Inside is a magical maze of shops, food, stalls, barbershops, nail bars. Salsa and Spanish music vibrate the shelves of groceries. Kids run excitedly through the aisles. Men and women sit and chat, sipping strong Colombian coffee. The smell of Argentinian meat, freshly made empanadas and tamales is impossible to resist. As day becomes night, the aisles fill up with young couples, groups of friends and families sitting down at tables to eat. The volume of the sound system is turned up. Beers imported from South America are passed around. People chat, their faces illuminated by fairy lights and hues of shop fronts. Couples dance. Out of the rubble, Tottenham's South American community has created a treasure trove of culture, community, love and life. London is often hailed as a centre of openness, diversity and multiculturalism. This is a corner of the capital that lives up to that hype. Of course I'll give way.
as far as Northern Ireland, but I'm sure there'll be a reason here. Come on, Jim Shannon.
I must say... First of all, can I congratulate the honourable gentleman? It's almost idyllic the way he's been describing it there, but does the member not agree that any development strategy, and I think it's coming to this, must be robust and ensure that those who are from different communities, and he's mentioned all those, within the overall community feel important and that they are heard and understood? And further, does he believe that we must be at pains to ensure that plans never ever exclude people from their businesses and marketplaces without understanding the effect of these plans upon their ordinary lives?
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for making the point he makes in the way he does. And he knows something about what it means to be excluded and excluded communities. And he's right that I am coming to this. And I know that those listening to this debate will be very grateful that he and others have taken an interest. Today, the Latin Village hosts the United Kingdom's second largest concentration of Latin American businesses. Around 60 mostly female traders run businesses in the village, providing a living for some 80 families. But for those who work, shop and even grew up in the plywood jungle, the market represents so much more than a paycheck. Tottenham has witnessed 2 riots in my lifetime, in 1985 and 2011. Its current challenges, including London's knife and gang crime epidemic, are well known. In this context, the Latin market is a vital space where social belonging is promoted and a sense of collective identity is built. Across families and generations, residents rely on the village as a safe and inclusive space for socialising and raising their families. It is a thriving model of community wealth creation, of affordable and effective childcare, and of intergenerational bonding. The demolition of Ward's Corner represents a very real threat to this social cohesion. For many, it could mean the end of their way of life. Now, almost everyone accepts that Ward's Corner would benefit from investment, but at present there are 2 competing visions for its future. The first redevelopment plan is Granger PLC's, which was selected as a development partner by Haringey Council in 2004. In 2012, the Council granted Granger PLC planning and conservation area consent for the redevelopment of the Ward's Corner site. It sets out a blueprint to build 196 new luxury flats with no allocation for social or affordable units and a new retail and leisure space. Just 6 commercial units will be allocated to independent stores. The rest will be filled with generic coffee shops and chain restaurants. A world away from vibrant and unique stalls inside the market. In addition, it was agreed that the Seven Sisters Market, including Latin Village, would be temporarily relocated before getting a new site on the other side of the road. However, planning documents show this new market will come with a dramatic increase of rent, effectively locking out the traders and family businesses that make up Latin Village. For the first 5 years, there will be a 2% cap on rent increases, but after that, rents will be subject to the market. Traders have estimated that this could mean up to a 300% rent increase. UN human rights experts have already condemned the scheme, calling it a gentrification project that represents a threat to cultural life. Traders could be forced to shut up shop, families may have to look for new incomes, and the jewel of the Latin Village could shatter and ultimately be swept away. The second vision for the future of Ward's Corner is the community plan, proposed in a planning application to the Council by the West Green Road and Seven Sisters Development Trust. Earlier versions of the community plan have had their planning permission, but you would not know from the public statements of Haringey Council, Transport for London or the developer. The community plan outlines a vision for a high-quality, tasteful restoration of Ward's Corner building back to its former glory and its use as a community asset and space rather than demolition of the Ward's Corner department building. The plan says, we believe that it's not necessary to demolish existing historic assets or to dislocate an entire community that has lived and worked on the site for a generation and more. We regard restoration as a more sustainable form of regeneration building as it does on already existing community assets. Top-down developer-led regeneration is not the only way. The redevelopment of Ward's Corner is a local issue in Tottenham, but it's part of a national and even global story. We've heard it so many times, in so many different places. Migrants turn a run-down space into a cultural and business centre, but then a corporate entity threatens to take it away. The questions it raises are the same in Tottenham as they are in Glasgow, just as they are the same in the Bronx. When a deprived area is redeveloped, aren't we meant to improve the lives of deprived people who already live there? Why does it take an influx of wealthy new people to an area until anyone bothers to invest in it? Shouldn't we bring the existing communities along with the redevelopment rather than kick them out? Is the purpose of redevelopment social cohesion or social cleansing? The traders who depend on Latin Village have been treated with gross disrespect and a lack of compassion throughout this process. The firm Quarterbridge was appointed the market facilitator, a supposedly independent body responsible for looking after traders, interest during the redevelopment. However, the director of Quarterbridge, Jonathan Owen, is also the director of Market Asset Management. Mr. Speaker, how can the market manager be the same man as the market facilitator? The very person who's supposed to stand up for the Latin Village market traders has an interest in the new development going ahead. Jonathan Owen has made his conflict of interest very clear by adding insult to injury of those he's supposed to protect. Owen has used phrases such as bloody illegal immigrants and declared that if I want to, I could get rid of 90% of the traders here. When traders asked whether drains could be cleared, he replied, "When was the last time you cleared the drains in your house?" Jonathan Owen and Quarterbridge were chosen and paid for by Transport for London. They were supposed to look out for the traders. Transport for London should have done proper due diligence when awarding the lease. If traders had experienced even a fraction of the racism and bullying that they have had to endure whilst on the platform of Seven Sisters Station, Transport for London would have acted. However, moments away in the market, on land owned by Transport for London, there has been deflection and inaction when clear and blatant acts of discrimination have taken place. That is not acceptable. Jonathan Owen, Quarterbridge and Market Asset Management must now be fired and sent packing from the market. There needs to be a thorough review as to why this level of unacceptable conduct has been allowed to carry on over such a long and sustained period on public land without Transport for London having done anything meaningful to stop it. There also needs to be an investigation into the very serious allegations of overcharging of traders for electricity and other utilities by the market operator, allegations which might amount to fraud, which ought to require police involvement. Haringey Council has technically given the community plan permission to go ahead. However, at the same time, it says there's no way for the Granger plc plan to be stopped. The Council's Housing and Regeneration Scrutiny Panel undertook a thorough review which lasted several months and heard evidence from traders, council officers, Transport for London, Granger, Quarterbridge, architects, experts and academics. For the first time in years, traders at the market felt listened to. It was a model of good overview and scrutiny work. However, last week, the Cabinet of Haringey Council rejected 8, partially agreed with 3 and fully agreed with just 3 out of the 14 recommendations made by its own scrutiny panel on the redevelopment. The Council maintains that some of the recommendations were simply not within their remit. I spoke to the Council about this week. However, those recommendations it rejected included Recommendation 5, which called for a review of how all Section 106 conditions are monitored and enforced to make sure that people with protected characteristics are protected under the Equality Act. An investigation undertaken by Haringey Council's own planning department into Section 106 concluded that indeed it was breached and that the Council should have known and should have acted earlier. In addition, when the CPO was granted by the department, the planning inspector, James Felgate, given an erroneous interpretation of Granger's commitment to guarantee the traders' rent. The report suggested that traders' rents should be guaranteed to rise by no more than 2% per year indefinitely. In reality, this guarantee only holds for 5 years. Given these issues, I say to the Secretary of State, maintain that the CPO is still valid, frankly. Other recommendations rejected by Haringey Council Cabinet include the recommendation to explore the feasibility and cost benefits of all approaches for a full or partial buyout. This means not giving the community plan a chance. Worse still, the Council even rejected the recommendations to work with Granger plc and relevant community groups to coordinate a combined solution. Surely this is wrong. And I asked the Secretary of State, how can we bring partners together? How can people sit down with traders, with the Council, with Granger, to broker a solution that all of us can get behind? When we say we're on the side of the many, not the few, we should not be sending enforcement officers to hassle family traders. When a Labour council rightly talks about putting people before profit, that means being led by the voices of the communities, not the developers. And some of the evictions that we've seen just this week are a scandal and have caused real concern in the constituency. That's basically how people in my constituency have been treated by what is in question marks named a so-called Corbyn Council, the first Corbyn Council. We cannot claim to be doing housing differently, then simply do it in the same way. Due process matters. Proper scrutiny and accountability matters. Standing up to racism and bullying and victimisation in all its ugly forms matters. The good thing for Haringey Council, TfL and this government is that then it's not too late. There's still time to do the right thing. All it will take is swallowing some pride and applying simple principles which should have followed from the start. Recognise the huge cultural and social value of the Latin village, invest in the traders who created it, and take the plans for its redevelopment seriously. I want to see the market operator got rid of and properly investigated, and if applicable, met with the full force of the law. I want to see the community plan for the market given proper consideration and actively looked at as a viable part of a new vision for Ward's Corner. I want the Secretary of State's help to facilitate the independently chaired roundtable discussions as a matter of urgency, where market traders are treated as equals and genuinely listened to, so that the better future can be shaped for the site, with them at the heart of the decisions as to what happens next. If Granger's development is what goes ahead, at the very least it needs to make some serious compromises. Firstly, given the housing crisis, it's outrageous that there's no provision for social housing. A new quota of a minimum 10% should be introduced. Secondly, there must be a large increase of spaces for independent traders. We cannot allow Ward's Corner to become another clone high street. Thirdly, the rent increases capped for 5 years is not good enough. There's no point preserving Latin Village for half a decade, only to let it later collapse. Let's introduce a review at the end of this period to decide whether to extend or change the cap. It would be a great failure for Tottenham to become just another story of gentrification. Locals pushed out as wealthy investors come in, culture bulldozed and replaced by clone high streets, another deprived community not invested in but pushed away. Let's Ward Corner instead become an example of how we can do regeneration better. Bottom up, not top down. Investment for the community that's based there, not in spite of it. A new future for Tottenham that does not demolish the past. The Leader of the Opposition, the member for North Islington, would have liked to have been here this afternoon. He's met with those in the Latin Village, and he also says that he stands with the Latin Village community to protect the market. It is a place of community identity that provides over 60 traders, independent traders with a livelihood. Their struggle, he says, is his struggle. And I would want to associate myself with his remarks. I look forward to what the Minister has to say.
Minister has to McVeigh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to start by congratulating the Right Honourable Member for Tottenham for bringing this debate today. I know it's an issue of great importance to him and also those associated with the Seven Sisters market. Given the time limit, I might not be able to address every issue that he's raised, and I should also be clear that for reasons I shall come on to in more detail a little bit later, I cannot freely comment on the regeneration of Ward's Corner and in particular the Secretary of State's decision to confirm the Ward's Corner compulsory purchase order. Now, I know the Right Honourable Member is an experienced member of the House and will understand that as there is an application to the Court of Appeal in respect of the High Court ruling upholding the Secretary of State's decision to confirm the Ward's Corner CPO, it is simply not possible for me to discuss the details and application to the Court of Appeal. To do so may prejudice those judicial review proceedings. The matter was lodged with the Court of Appeal just before Christmas, and it may be a number of months before it is known whether permission will be given for it to be subject to those further proceedings. I therefore presume that it was more important for him to get his concerns on the record than in anything I might be able to say today, and in that regard I commend him for getting those points on the record. I would, however, like to emphasise to colleagues in the House that the Government takes the issue of regeneration and the role of planning extremely seriously. Therefore, with this in mind, what I'll do is explain the background to the Government's involvement in the Wards Corner CPO leading up to the application to the Court of Appeal, and I will then place this in the context of the Government's view of the use of CPO's powers. Now, in September 2016, the London Borough of Haringey made the Wards Corner CPO to enable the Council to acquire compulsory 9 hectares of land to facilitate the comprehensive regeneration of land known as Wards Corner, for which planning permission had previously been granted by the Council for a mixed-use development. The Right Honourable member will be aware that the Council made a robust case to the inquiry that the scheme would act as a catalyst for the local community by bringing an injection of new investment, higher order retail activity, an improved Seven Sisters market, and more and higher quality jobs. The overall investment in terms of construction cost alone was around an estimated £60 million. During the construction phase, the development is forecast to provide 190 full-time equivalent direct jobs. Once complete, a further 95 direct jobs are anticipated, delivering a gross value add of £4.8 million per year. Indirectly, the scheme would also support further spin-off jobs. Moving on to the CPO, which was submitted to the Secretary of State for confirmation, following receipt of public objections to the CPO, a public local inquiry was arranged during July 2017. The community and the market traders themselves played a full and active part in the CPO process and in the public inquiry. An independent inquiry inspector heard oral submissions on behalf of the market traders group and other interested parties. The public inquiry inspector returned his findings and recommended to the Secretary of State in January 2018, and just over a year ago, the Secretary of State issued his decision to confirm the CPO. This would normally end the Secretary of State's formal involvement. However, the Right Honourable member is aware, I'm pretty sure, that the Secretary of State's decision was then challenged in the courts. The case was heard by the High Court in October 2019. Judgment was handed down in 2 days. The claim was dismissed and the judge refused leave to appeal the decision. I cannot interpret on the judgment, but should say that, overall, the judge was not persuaded that a genuine doubt exists as to the approach adopted by the inspector and therefore the Secretary of State in his decision on the issues of affordability and the public sector equality duty of concerns of the claimant. This is not the end of the matter, and litigation has continued. Following the High Court judgment, the claimant lodged an application to the Court of Appeal. As yet, there has been no word on whether the application has been accepted, and it may be several months before this is known whether the fresh appeal will get permission to be heard, and that next tier of the judicial system. Therefore, while the Government welcomed the judgment made in the High Court, the Council must wait again to see if it can take forward the order which will enable the much-needed regeneration proposals for the area. I would now like to set out the wider purpose of the CPO process and its role in enabling and supporting the regeneration of communities such as those in Tottenham. Successive governments have supported compulsory purchase as an important tool to assemble land into a single ownership to enable delivery of a wide range of development projects. Used properly, compulsory purchase can enable the development of new communities, essential social infrastructure and commercial facilities, all of which can support economic growth, regeneration and improvements in quality of life. It enables the acquisition of land and property in the public interest without the agreement of the owner, subject to the payment of fair compensation. While land can be acquired by agreement between the parties concerned, such voluntary approaches are unlikely to be suitable for assembling all the land needed for major projects, because some owners may not agree to sell their land or might ask for an unreasonable high price. Local authorities and others empowered to use compulsory purchase powers to deliver a wide range of projects, from large-scale town centre regeneration schemes to the refurbishment of individual empty homes. To use compulsory purchase powers, an acquiring authority must first make a CPO and submit it to the relevant minister to decide whether to confirm it. The acquiring authority must notify all qualifying persons, including relevant owners and occupiers. The CPO is advertised through newspapers and site notices to notify the general public. Remaining objectors to the CPO have the right to object and be heard at public local inquiry. An inspector's task is to inquire into the CPO and to elicit all the information needed to enable the minister to decide whether or not to confirm the CPO. I am sure the Right Honourable Member will agree that the CPO process provides ample opportunity for all interested parties to fully, properly and fairly be involved in the process. The inspector will then prepare and submit their report to the minister, including their recommendation on whether or not the CPO should be confirmed. The minister will then carefully consider the inspector's report and decide whether to confirm, modify or not confirm the CPO. In deciding whether or not to confirm the CPO, the minister is acting in a quasi-judicial capacity. In exercising this function, it is incumbent upon the minister to act and to be seen to act fairly and even-handedly. A CPO will only be confirmed where the minister is satisfied that the order contributes to the economic, social and environmental well-being of an area. The minister must also be satisfied there is a compelling case in the public interest to justify interfering with the human rights of those with an interest in the land affected by the CPO. In making the decision, a minister must also have due regard to the public sector equality duty under the Equality Act of 2010. I will indeed give way.
I'm very grateful to the Minister for giving way, and she's setting out the rules that govern CPO, and I'm grateful for that. But would she be concerned if a local authority and others were engaging in evictions whilst the CPO is still being challenged in the courts to get people out of the building, or using false pretences like the state of the building in order to see the building vacated so they can proceed as they desire?
The Right Honourable Member is making a compelling case. What I can say is any person aggrieved who wishes to dispute the validity of the CPO or any of its provisions has the right to legally challenge the confirmation of the CPO. Where a legal challenge is successful, the court has the discretionary power to quash either decision to confirm the CPO or the whole or any part of the CPO itself. A decision not to confirm a CPO may be challenged by way of a judicial review challenge made to the High Court, and that was the case here with the Wards Corner CPO. I would like to reassure colleagues in the House that the Government remains committed to the regeneration and revitalisation of those communities most in need. We fully support Haringey Council in its commitment to regenerate throughout the Tottenham area. Major developments are ongoing at Tottenham Hale and around the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, with others planned. The intention is for this development to provide a catalyst for the regeneration of neighbouring areas such as Seven Sisters, which is the focus of the CPO that we are debating here today. As I said in my opening remarks, I must avoid prejudicing the legal process. Should the application to the Court of Appeal succeed, we must therefore await the outcome from the Court of Appeal. And I commend the Right Honourable Member for bringing this case that he spoke so eloquently about, and I would conclude again by thanking him for that.
The question is this House to now adjourn. As many of that opinion say aye? Aye. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order.